Now, if you've watched this show before, you know these are colors. I'm not Miss Pink person. Okay, here comes a good one. Something unexpected in the shadows. I like to put unexpected things everywhere. I don't know, you ever remember being a kid and playing with the shadows on the wall and doing little birds? Hi, welcome to Give Your Wall Some Soul. I'm Shannon Grissom. Well, today we're finally going to do the last part of this still life, this is part 3. And you'll get to see how I really finish a painting, hopefully. If not, we're going to be done with it anyway. But what's good about tonight is the painting's already at a first statement stage, so you'll get to see a lot of glazing, scumbling, a lot of finishing techniques. So a little bit of this and that. It's going to be great. To start out, I want to show you the things that I've changed since you last saw the painting. I worked on the composition, and there are a couple things that have changed. I noticed that the water level line was at the same level as the wine label, and that's just really boring composition. That pretty much cut the painting in half. So I changed the water so that it would be up a little bit higher. I raised the water level there. I could have changed the label, but I didn't want it to hit this flower here. So one of them had to go. I figured it was easier to change this. So that was number 1. I changed that. 2, I did quite a bit of rearranging the drapery down below, and I'm still not through with that. In fact, I don't like this sharp angle here, so I'm going to actually change that tonight. Paint right over some of that, so you get to see how I change that. 3, I did block in the flowers and just put in dark, medium, and light shapes, so that because I could have spent 2 or 3 sessions painting the flowers, and that just would have been boring. So we'll get to glaze over the top of that and finish that. And I cleaned up the shadow a little bit over here. This was pretty messy. And I deleted some of the flowers. So a lot of what you do in a painting, it's like a good film. It's all about editing and what you leave in, what you leave out. I had to make these spaces a lot more pleasing. In fact, this shape still kind of bothers me right here. I'll probably glaze over it so that I can just reduce it and it fades into the background. So what do we do to get started? Where do you start on a painting like this? You know, you're right in the middle of it. Where do you go? Well, I'm going to glaze some of the background first. That's an easy way to start. So when you're glazing something, you take paint and you thin it down. Do I want to use that color or not? I don't think I want to use the ochre. I had the ochre out, but I think I'm going to try something a little more radical because I'm just in the mood. Let's see. This was a burnt. It's a quinacridone burnt orange is what it is. And I'm going to take that with a bunch of liquid, really wet my brush. It's kind of bright. So usually when you're glazing something, you're muting it down, but I want this to almost meld in with the background. So I'm going to see what happens here. Now you can see I'm just going, whoops, right over the top. It's pretty runny, but it's still bright. I want these to kind of fade into the background a little. Now what I'm going to do is sit there and look in the monitor and see if that's working. It's working. Yay. Okay, so I'm actually going to do it over the whole background right in here. And isn't that wonderful what it does to this color here? It brightens that up, that background area, and it tones this down. So it's that was a good choice. I got lucky because, I really didn't know what that was going to do. I very seldom use that color, so That was good. So it's fun to experiment. Things, you don't always have to know what's going to happen. It gets boring if you do. Okay, so what else do I want to be in the background? This flower, I think I'll keep a little, this particular one, I'll keep that forward. And I'm continually looking back at it, looking at my mirror to see what's standing out and what's not. Okay, what do I want in the background? I think this needs to be in the background too. So you can still see what I painted underneath. I love glazing. I do lots of series of glazing. It really makes the color pop, very rich. What else do I want to kind of fade in the background? Let's see. Well, this one here. The more this fades a little bit, this will pop. And how about down here? Yeah, that's good. Now, the trick is not to get too carried away, and yes, I'm guilty of getting too carried away all the time. So let's see, what else is in the background? This is in the background. Love that. So I paint a little, and then either you get back from your painting or you look in the mirror, which is pretty much the equivalent of what I'm doing, to see if it's working, to see if it's pushing these flowers forward and pulling some back. And that's important. Yes, it is pushing these into the background. I really want the stuff that's here to look three-dimensional so that these blooms are really popping out at you and the other stuff needs to recede. Now, what's interesting about what I'm doing is typically when people want things to recede, they make them darker and they make them cooler. But I like red, I like hot colors, and I'm using a burnt, this is like against the laws of everything they tell you to do. I'm using a burnt quinacridone orange to actually make something recede in the background. And it's doing the trick, but it still has that rich, grab you color that I love. So I'm going to do a little more. Again, the trick is not to do too much, not to get carried away, which for me is hard. Okay. I want this one in the background. I need to stop, take a look at what I'm doing. That's good. Okay, what else do I want to fade? Maybe, well, a little bit here. Yeah, what else do I see? Maybe. I know I sound like Miss Mary Ann. And I see this, and I see that. Okay, I will leave that alone for now. I mean, I'm tempted to use that color all over the place. And I could, but what would happen if I kept going in that fashion is that it would be all monotone like it was. It would go back to flat because there would be no variation between the dark and light and the bright and brighter. So now I can take the turbocharged Indian yellow, because that makes things totally pop. I don't know why I squirted so much out here because, you only need a little bit of this Indian yellow and it'll take over. It's kind of like the Rodney Dangerfield of colors. It gets no respect. It's loud. It's obnoxious. But if you do it right, it makes you smile. If you do it wrong, you just want it to go home. So we'll see what happens. Okay, I want this to be a little brighter. I'm glazing with this too. When you look at the daffodils, they do have those center petals are a lot brighter than the outer petals. Let's see, what else is going on here? This part was really bright. Go, Rodney, go. I don't know where the Rodney Dangerfield thing came from, except that my friends and I were talking about Caddyshack today. Maybe that's where it came from. Okay, so this is bright. That's more of a shadow. Now I have to stop, see what's going on. Oh, look at that. Okay. What else do I want to do? This one is really bright. I'm hardly putting any of this on. Again, because if you're not careful, it really takes over. Michael used to say too much yellow is like a spoiled child. And I like to just push it. Okay, this one looks pretty flat, but I shall fix it later. Okay. And what about this flower? It needs a little help here. Now yellow, because it's light in value to begin with, it's not, if you look at my palette and you look at yellow on the palette next to the white, it's very light. So these yellows are light compared to, say, dioxazine purple or any of the blues. There's not a lot of value difference between the white and the yellow. So when you're making something look three-dimensional, it gets a little tricky with the yellows to make them pop. So you've got to add some violet or some of those other colors to make it work. Otherwise, it's just a little flat. Okay, so let's start adding a little bit of violet. I'm going to take some, I'm glazing now with some dioxazine purple. Got a smaller brush. I'm going for a smaller area. Still not a tiny one. You can see on the palette, I'm hardly using any paint, hardly any pigment as well. It's all kind of a watered down version. Okay, where's it really dark? I'm reinstating this. Ooh, and you know what? I'm going to add some red in there just because I haven't. I have to tell you the story. I did an event at the Triton Museum, and it was like an Iron Chef paint-off thing. And I didn't bring any cad red light. Can you imagine me doing a painting without any cad red light? Oh my God. And it was red cherries. I didn't think I was going to be able to do it, but I did. And it was really interesting because the pigments that I used were the Perylene Scarlet and the quinacridone Violet, and these are very, very transparent. So it had a really interesting look to it, but boy, it was really unsettling not having the cad red. Speaking of that, I'm going to add a little bit of the cad red and warm up these flowers a little bit. Let's put a little more dioxazine purple. See how that looks kind of brown? Right in here in the center. And it makes a good, wow, I need to shadow this whole thing. So I'm going to start to grab some red. And I just used a dirty brush. Do the flowers show red there? No, but this is going to add some interest. Now the thing that I have to be careful of is that red's going to make it pop out more. So I'm going to have to add some violet in there, otherwise it's going to be, I'm going to lose that whole effect I just got. Okay, so that's dark. Now where was some shadow? Right in here. All right, so this was actually darker than right here. So I'm going to correct some of my values. Adjust. Always little adjustments. And that needs to be darker too. I might grab, okay, now I'm going to go into a little bit of the ochre with the dirty brush and make that a little darker in here. A little shadow. It has to have some separation between that and the other petals. I don't typically do a whole group of flowers because that's a visual distress thing for me. I like lots of space. I like a lot of simplicity. So that many things going on in one painting is almost overload for me. But you know what? I just love this setup. So I thought, well, let's give it a shot. I'll do it, and then it'll probably be another year before I do it again. Okay. So that needs to be darker. I need to get a little more pigment here, right in the center. fan that out. Well, what am I doing to make this effect? I'm putting it on heavy here, and as I move further out, I have a lighter pressure on the canvas. Okay, so I have to leave that alone right now. And darken this up a little bit. See, I need to adjust. I'm going to wipe my brush. I'm going to adjust some of the values. Almost went a little overboard there. Imagine that. So I'm going to take some of this ochre and blend this in right here. Tone it down, because I went and pulled a Rodney. My apologies to anybody named Rodney out there. I'm talking about Dangerfield. And hopefully he would laugh. Okay, so now I'm going to push some of this out a little further. And I need to darken this here, or that doesn't have any separation either. Okay. And where else can I go? We need to go make some sense out of this one. This has to be darker here and on the edges. Now I could spend a whole hour doing these flowers, but don't worry, I'm not. I'm going to move all over the canvas, address a lot of different issues, and then come back and see what we can tidy up at the end. Now why am I putting dark here when you don't even see it in the reference photo? That's because photos don't tell you everything, and there are times when you know what a thing does as opposed to what you see it doing in the photo. And I know that if I put dark in the center and gradually get lighter on the edges, it's going to make this thing turn. And that's from just sitting around space and looking at flowers and seeing what they do. Now the lightest lights haven't been addressed either, but I'll go back and do that later. Okay, so I could get bold and add just a little bit of yellow, a little bit of this screaming yellow to these outer petals. But I have to be careful and not overdo it. That's always hard for me. Usually what happens, you know, when I'm at home painting and I'm working with yellow, 9 times out of 10, the first time I hit the canvas, I overdo it. Sometimes even the second or third time I hit the canvas, I overdo it. And then I let it dry, and I come back and tone down the yellow. But I think it's better to give it everything you have, and you might just get it, because then it's got that wonderful energy. And if you got to tone it down a little bit, okay. It's kind of like turning the music down. All right. Okay, so where was I? I was on that. I added a little bit of that, but I was afraid to just really punch it up. I'm going to make these edges turn. What's going on here? That needs to be darker. That needs to be darker and grayer. So I'm going to... That was too much, but whoops. Might actually stop glazing and use some white over the top. So I'm going to take some clean white so that I'm not contaminating my white up there. And dip my brush directly into that. Now, once I put my brush into this white, I'm not going to be able to glaze with it again. So that's a given. It's kind of a muddy color. It may or may not work out. I might just need a clean brush, but it's kind of muddy in the photo too. Yeah. We'll see. Nah, I think I need a clean one. Okay, so we want a little bit of light here. That'll help separate that, but that little bit was so little it didn't show. That's not going to do any good. Okay. Need some white right in here. Need some light on the edges. And I'm varying. I'm not just doing a straight line, breaking it up a little bit and kind of blending that inside edge. The outside edge is a lot harder. Okay, so that's making that start to pop a little bit. Now that we're stepping back at it, you get an idea of what's happening. So that one flower is starting to pop. That's good. That's happening. Now I need to address this because this is wonky right here. And so I need to, basically it's a case of dark against light, light against dark. And I can go ahead and really make these pop, this part of it. Let's go overboard and see what happens. Okay, put a little bit down. Wow. Sometimes wow is good, sometimes it's not. Okay, so that's really bright, and then I have the lighter areas that I'm going to actually use a cad yellow deep. So I'm using a different yellow. It's not as powerful. It's more orangey. It almost looks like it's the same, but it's not. It's very much, it's an opaque color, and it's gonna be treated different. So when I'm going to go ahead and put these right into the white. That grays down quite a bit. Yeah. Okay, that's a nice mellow yellow. If there is such a thing. Okay, so this is lighter here. And where else is there some light? Right here. I'm looking for the really light, bright spots. And I'm just going to work on this a little bit longer and then switch to different areas. I'm going to be all over the canvas tonight. Surprise. Okay, so that was light. Not really sure what this is doing, but we'll make it lighter. There was a little bit light here. I don't know if I want to leave that. That little section was light. This is light. It's all about just checking your work, seeing where you are. Okay. Now what I need to do is make this part quote unquote turn. And in order to do that, this has to be really light here. So this little section here is light. This is going to be light. Where else? Right here. And then I have to kind of ochreize the rest of it. And that'll tone that down. So I'm going to grab some yellow ochre. Hopefully that's not too... There was a time I wouldn't use yellow ochre at all because it alone by itself, it's not one of my favorite colors. But it's really good next to other, it plays well with others. Okay, I had white in there, and white makes it do things that are not good. White, you know how I like white, very bright, vibrant colors, and this makes it too neutral for me. Okay, so I'm grabbing straight yellow ochre. And I think I might infuse it with a little bit of this quinacridone, because just if it's not bright enough, I got to do something to it. All right, so we're going to have to make this turn. There has to be some separation here. What did I have on my brush? I don't know, but it's going away. I'm still not using a lot of paint. Just scrubbing this in. Where else is it a little bit darker? Kind of like right here. That's maybe a little too bright, so I'm going to just scrub that in. My way of erasing it. Okay. And this needs to be darker here too. Getting sucked in the painting. Okay. So stand back, look at it. Yeah, that's making it turn a lot more. All right, so where else does it need to be a little darker? Right here. And then we need to add a little bit of light to this spoiled loud section to help that open up a little bit. In the middle, that helps it turn. I'm spending time on one flower so you can just basically see how it's done. None of this is a fast process. Unless you're my friend Susanna Falzer, I've never seen anybody paint like her. She paints like a mad woman. It's so beautiful, and she just whips them out. Okay, so that's good. And when you get back from that, you can see that it's really starting you get the whole depth of what's going on in the flower. You can really just crawl into that hole and see all the little bugs that live there and everything. So that's good. That's starting to happen. This is still a little too pronounced, so I'm going to just tone that down. Tone this down a little bit. And I'm looking in, you can see that I'm kind of painting and looking in the mirror. I do this a lot at home where I look in the mirror and paint. And it's like, okay, is that working? Is that not? Okay, that's a good basic start. And I could stay here all day and work on that. But then you'd never see the rest of it. So let me just tidy up a couple things and we're going to move on. I think this is going to be one of those million brush days. All right, I still need to make it a little darker down here. And so I will do that. Taking some straight dioxazine purple. Just glazing under here. Not glazing anymore, this is more of a scumble, where you just take a dry brush and some paint, put it over the top. Not a lot of paint. Most of the applications that I use are not thick paint, unless I'm doing a painting in one session, and that's the only time I do a real thick application of paint. It's not bad to paint thick, that's just not how I do it. Actually, I had a teacher that was freaking out because I hardly used any paint, and he kept telling me I wasn't putting enough paint on the canvas. And I figure as long as you cover the canvas, looks good, makes you feel good, then I'm not going to measure how much I'm squirting out. Okay, so that's good. I'm starting to get some separation. You can see in the reference photo that they're way everybody's bright, everybody's way yellow in that. And I really wanted this to be, I want the whole thing, this to direct you to other places on the canvas. So I didn't want the whole thing to be as bright as it was in the photo. All right, so what else do we need to address here? Well, let's put in some of the lights in the vase. Let's add some of that. So I can take some of that white that we've already mixed, and it's mixed with some of the yellow, and that's okay. It's a nice warm white. So we've got some light that's right here. And I think that's just a little too yellow. I'm going to grab some straight white and pull it down. Wet my brush a little bit. A little yellow is good, but I think that was overdoing it. All right, I've got a bright brush, and I'm just going to put a little bit right here. How far does that go? If I'm measuring against the flower, well, the flower's like a little higher than than in the reference photo. Okay, so then there's that. Maybe add a little bit of light here. There's not a lot of value contrast in the vase in my painting. Ooh, I saw some stems that I missed. Do I want to add those? Maybe. For right now, I'll try not to get sidetracked and just put in this light. There was some there. Where else is there some light? On the other side. Now we're going to have to make up some things because we changed. And the water levels changed, so some of the reflections are going to be changed. So we'll see what we have to do there. On this side of the vase, it's a lot warmer because this is more of direct light, direct highlight. And on the other side, it's reflected light. So it's going to be a little cooler. So I'm going to add a little bit of, just a touch, I mean hardly any, of ultramarine blue to this side to cool it off a little. That wasn't enough. Okay. And there's some light right here. Light pretty much goes all the way to the edge. And while I'm there, there's that one compositional element that just bugs me. And, well, not one, but there are a couple. But there's one that I was thinking about as I was packing up everything to take to the studio. And that's this sharp line here. I need to address that. So I'm going to get sidetracked. Imagine that. I started to put the light in on the vase, but this affects the vase here. So I'm gonna change that line. So what do I want to do? You're directing traffic here. This is a nice flowing area right in here. This yellow. I like the repeating pattern of yellow, red, yellow. Got this nice blue thing that's cooling it down here. But this is great leading you toward the egg, but it's just too much of a straight shot. I really got to break that up. So I'm going to take yet another brush, and I should pull some blue down so that I don't contaminate all this color up here. Okay, so what am I going to do? I mean, people are afraid sometimes. I know I was when I'd first start something oh my God, you're just going to paint over it? Well, yep, if it's not working, it's got to go. So I'm going to make this not quite such a sharp edge. I like that. And I'm going to paint in the mirror and say, okay, that's better. That's not as heavy duty there. This can be bluer in shadow. And that's that phthalo turquoise. I'm conscious too of not making shapes that are too uniform, too boring. Everything's directing you back into the still life. I could probably bring that yellow. I will try that. I'll bring some of the yellow down and see what happens. It's either going to be really good, or I'll have to let it dry and paint over it. Either way, it's worth a shot. I don't like it the way it is. So I'm painting right over the blue. You can actually see that the blue was way up here before, and I changed that. I've kind of gone in a lot of different directions there. Okay, so that's good. That's not as abrupt. There are times when abrupt is good, but this isn't one of them. You know, there's staccato passages, just like in music, there's staccato passages in a painting where it's a sharp boom, boom on the painting. But those are more for highlights than this fabric that's just leading you somewhere else. Okay, I like that shape. I'm going to step back and look at it. Well, that is, okay, the flow of that is so much happier. Okay, now what we have is this nice little sea of yellow going down here. We've got this reaching here. I'll add a little highlight there. It is so much happier. That part is much better. And so now I need to do something with the very bottom to kind of clean that up. And I just put the reference photo off to the side because, of course, we're not even following that anymore. At least down at the bottom of the painting we're not. We are more toward the top. Okay, so as this hits here, it's going to be a little lighter. So I'm adding a little white to the blue. Yeah, I like that better. We need that little separation. And then I just have to decide what I'm going to do with this phthalo turquoise, which I just love that color. Okay, that's happier. Then I need to have more of a, can't just be a straight line coming down like that, so I'm going to make this Now the funny thing is, when I first changed this, I didn't like this shape right here. I was talking with my friend Janet Vanderhoff. She's an incredible painter, and we were talking about there are things that when you're in the middle of a painting and you do something and you know it's wrong, and you go back and you try to correct it and you do the same thing over again. And then you go back and you correct it and you do it again. And there are times when this just has to be a certain way in a painting. And so one of two things happens. Either you can break the cycle or you can't. And if you can't, then you work with how can you deal with whatever your tragic flaw is in that painting. You can either throw it out or sometimes it actually adds charm. You never know. So I'm not sure what's going to happen in this little section. I think it's going to be okay, but this is one thing I'm guarding against because I had this same shape here that I'm guarding, that I did, and I didn't want to get that again. So I'll have to break that up, and I'll add some. We need some bright phthalo turquoise. Interesting that most of my paintings, when you look at them, have more of a red bottom. And the cooler tones are up at the top, but this one's a very cool. Although there's a red undertone there, we'll see how it ends up. Okay, this is one of my favorite little punch colors. It reminds me of summer. Sure didn't make very much of that. We'll see how far it goes. think I'm going to use every brush in here by the time we're done. All right. Do I pick it up and turn it, or how do I deal with this thing? Nah, I'm not going to turn it around. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll turn it upside down. That'll give me that's a good idea. It'll give me a good perspective. If I turn the painting entirely upside down, hopefully I won't get stuck in that wonky shape that I'm in. So I'm going to pick it up right now, turn the entire piece upside down, and paint at the top. That'll hopefully help me look at the shape better and see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is almost a straight line. That's definitely a straight line. We don't want to keep that. I'm going to start putting this blue right in here. Oh, that's good. That breaks it up. I think I'm liking that shape. So I'm looking at just shapes. I don't care whether it's. I'm not caring whether it's fabric or what it is. It's it's spots of color to me. When I first started painting, I was very concerned with whatever it was. And now it's at the point where, is the color happy? Okay, that's good. Now I'm just going to step back at it and say, all right, I like those shapes. I like that upside down. Maybe what I'll do is put in some straight, I'll wipe my brush, some straight phthalo turquoise, and work that in over the top of what's there. Oh, that's pretty. See a big old chunk of dry paint. I want to make sure that these two shapes are not the same as this. And they pretty much are. So see, that's that same area. That same area that's problematic. So I have to change this so that these shapes are not the same. This is one of those places where if I were at home in the studio, I could get stuck for a couple hours in one little place, but don't worry, I won't do that to you guys. We will just see what happens here. I love that there's red underneath here. That makes this so much richer. Okay, whoops. Right in the middle of the vase, I just got a big old spot. So that's easy, just wipe it off. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'll pick up the canvas and I'm going to flip it over one more time. Back to where it was, right side up. And I'm going to start in the background and move my way forward. Yeah, I like those shapes. Okay, I'm happy with those shapes now. They're going to work. I'm going to start in the background, move my way forward, and I will eventually address that vase, but I want to do a couple more things before we hit that area. So what do I want to do? I'm going to glaze. Let me see how much is on this. Nope, that's too orange. I'm getting out some serious red because that's, you know, when I've gone this long and not done a lot of red, going through withdrawal. Okay. This looks like a real cool red, and it looks like it wouldn't work, but if you put it over a shadow, it's gorgeous. That's exactly what I'm going to do. My husband would be waiting for me to finish this still life so he can try this wine. He hasn't tried this type yet. Okay. Oh, I like that. That's really rich. Nice. And let's add some in here. And I'm actually going to, now I'm going back to my reference photo and looking at it because I need a little help. It's dark right under here, so I'm just glazing right over the top of that. Cool thing about this red is I can glaze these outer edges right over the top of the green. That is a really nice, rich, and it helps create form. Now this is a good example of a soft edge. You cannot, it's hard to see where this edge stops and this edge starts. I love those lost edges that Rembrandt made. Gorgeous. Your imagination just fills in the gaps. Now what's interesting is that my husband, having not seen the reference photo, wondered what this weird thing was right here in the painting. And that's really a good observation, because if you've not seen the reference photo, you don't know what it means, then you're wondering what the heck is that back there? And that brought me back to when I was first painting. When people are looking at your paintings, they have no idea what's in the reference photo. All they see is your painting. So if it's not working in the painting, get rid of it. Having said that, we don't know yet, because I haven't decided whether I was going to put a label here or put the winery's lettering on here. So what I think I'm going to do until I decide is I'm taking the same red that I have, and I'm simply going to tone this down so that it looks like more of the label. It's not popping out as much. Of course, it's that rich red, because, you know, that makes me happy. That's good. And I can do the suggestion of lettering. Just, you can scribble or whatever. Whatever you want to do. Now, if this were a commission for the winery or somebody else, I'd do the lettering. But this is for me, just for fun. Okay, I like that. I like that there's definitely some dimension between the bottle and the background. I need to address some of these shadowy areas of the yellow, and I'm tempted to put this violet right over the top of that yellow. And let's just see what happens. I mean, these are two colors. Sometimes when I see them together, they're an ouch. But this, oh, that's nice. There's a Jim Croce song. I think Bad Bad Leroy Brown. At one point, he's talking about Dolores and oh, that do look nice. And that's kind of what I was thinking about this one little section. Okay. Okay. I can hear you guys. It's like, oh my God, we're getting close to the end. She's not even touched the egg. What's going on here? So where else do I need to dress? That needs to be a little bit darker. We've got a little separation there. I can make some little folds here. Can't do too much here because I'm going over the top of that, and that would just mess that up. This could actually be cool. You know, you still know it's yellow, but by toning that down a little bit, that's cool. Okay, this is now where some more fun stuff comes in. Still have the red on my brush, and because that's just a happy thing. I can throw some red, and there really is. There's a reflection in the reference photo of some red here that's coming off the bottle. And I don't have to paint this meticulous little thing. You can just throw in red and it's happy. So there's some red there. And that, believe it or not, is not bright enough. So some red there. Here, all the way up. Now I'm tempted to put a little over here, but I can't do that. So I'll leave that alone. I remember being, barely see that part of the reference photo, but I remember being some red on the bottom. I don't even know where that came from, but it was there. It was probably reflecting off whatever I was wearing that day. As much as I paint red, I wear a lot of it. Okay, and how do we want to make the egg pop? Just like anything else. Light in the middle. Oops. That was too watered down. That's better. Now the difference between this egg and half the canvas is that it's just barely been touched. I've not really worked on it that much. So it doesn't have lots of layers of paint on it. So I'm going to get some reflected light from the cloth. Some here too. And then take some straight white and meet everything in the middle. Hopefully that'll work. I'm just scrubbing it in and scribbling. And that's how I'm blending the color. Then I'm going to look at the mirror and see it's starting to look like an egg. A little brush hair hanging out there. Like all that little extra color, that's good. Okay, I'm going to tidy up the little edges there. You know, what you've seen in this show is 3 hours of working on the painting in the show, and probably maybe 2 hours when the TV wasn't on. And it probably will take, after the show's over, another 2 or 3 hours to get it done. Not a fast process. Okay, so there's that. Now what I want to do is just punch this up a little bit so it makes a little more sense. All right, I need to soften these edges here. And I'm going to just take this brush and wipe the paint off of it. And use very little paint and feather out the edges. There's a special fan brush that some people use to do that. And I just never got the hang of it with the fan brush, so I don't use it. If I can get the effect with other brushes, that's what I'll use. I do like the fan brush for pine needles and things like that, but for this kind of blending, it never worked for me. Okay, so that's good. That looks like that's going on there. Step back and look at it. Where else is there? We can do some, need to do a water level thing right here. Okay, the other thing I do in the studio is, how do I know whether I have a straight line or whether it's square? I actually will take a T-square, put it up here, and draw the straight line. Hey, you know, if it works. I don't think that's cheating. It just helps me get a straight line. Okay, so there's that. And we got more of a water level going there. And, you know, you could be bold and throw in some highlights. Now, if I were painting this is pretty early to throw that in. I wouldn't necessarily do this, but I just got to show you that it's okay to be bold. So let's take a little highlight and say you see the highlights in the reference photo. There's some like one here, one there. And I didn't like the shape of that. And where else? There's something going on like right there. And here. A little bit muted there. I probably didn't have enough paint on the brush. Things like this, you know, even they start to make the thing look like glass. Now, what's kind of messes this up is that this is a real squirrely line. You know, they should have been more of a straight line. I could probably get rid of the one down there. How do you get rid of something like that? You take some liquid, scrub it in, take a paper towel, and erase. Okay, so that makes most of it have much sense. So when you're really close to it, you don't get the idea that it's starting to have reflected light. When you're further away, you can see that it starts to make the thing pop. Now, we don't have tons of time to make the rest of it pop. So if you were to finish it at home, what will we do? I'd probably put some little squiggly thing in for the label. Just some little design element, because that helps add character. Then I would continue to further refine the lights and darks on this. And really, it's a matter of just paying attention to what shapes are here. And as soon as you follow those and continue to get the lights and darks refined, then you will get something that looks like glass or looks three-dimensional. Even in this crude state, it's starting to pop. It's starting to show. What else would I do? I'd go back in the flowers, further refine those. And I'll tell you what, on the next show, I'll bring it in and we can talk about what I've done. So I hope that I've encouraged you to be bold, throw a little highlight, put it down. Don't worry about, you know, if it doesn't work, you can erase it. Just get your paper towel, wipe it off. And if you are going back into it for another time, I usually soften my edges so I'm not stuck or committed to anything. So that's basically what I would do so that I'm not committed to any of these highlights. I think that there are too many, it would be confusing. So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Give Your Walls some Soul. Thanks for watching. I'm Shannon Grissom.